Ladies, gentlemen, and destined ones of all ages, this game is absolutely chock full of a surprising amount of explorable areas. For something that was pretty much advertised as being a linear game, something that was then sold as being linear by journalists who had played it, and most people who see the game without having played it themselves also will call it linear. But those of us who have not just played, but played into at least the middle section of this game, know that very quickly stops being the case. Chapter 3 and 4 become these sprawling open areas at different points full of secrets, and while Chapter 5 is undeniably shorter and more straightforward on the actual pathing, there are still a good number of secrets here to be found that you can easily miss. So today we'll talk about the biggest, most important optional stuff that you can miss on your journey through Chapter 5 in Black Myth Wukong, so you can round back and grab anything that you may care about but may not have found. We'll go through in a sort of progression order, and for the most part I won't mention anything that is main path or obvious unless it directly ties into a later secret that's really important. That said, the first thing is quite big but also very unmissable, which is the 5 element carts. You'll be told about this along the main path, and you will find at least the first one undoubtedly, as it physically sits on the main path through the level itself. Technically you can just run around this and avoid it, which does make it optional, but defeating or finding all of the 5 element carts is how you unlock the main secret area for Chapter 5, so you definitely want to do it, and the first one is here just a few feet back from the Camp of Seasons Shrine. Next up, continue to the Height of Ember Shrine. Then we have a couple of things to do here. The first thing of note is as you continue along the main path here, past the mandatory boss, a health bar will appear for the Grey Bronze cart. This is the second of the cart bosses that you will have to defeat, and while the health bar appears quite early, the enemy won't show up until you reach the bottom of the slope, which is along the main path. So again, yes, you do basically have to kill this, but it's important that you do so. However, on your way down, you will enter a cave. Surprisingly missable, if you instantly turn right upon entering this cave, there will be a little box that you can open with the Amber Prayer Beads curio. This is actually one of the better curios in the entire game for many builds or setups, as it boosts the focus generation just in general, and it does it by a fair amount. Focus generation, of course, means more big heavy attacks, and the big heavy attacks are the bulk of damage for most people that play the game, unless you are very specifically built otherwise. So make sure that you get the curio, and then as you continue down the hill, the other cart boss at the bottom. Then our next secrets are grouped up around the Valley Entrance Shrine a bit further into the chapter. From here you want to head forwards along the main path until you've come across this shielded warrior enemy on a sort of stone bridge over some lava. From here there's a drop on the left and the right. You want to take a drop to the left side to go into the lava river, and you can walk in this, but you will take damage at least as a default. You can then equip something like the fireproof vessel that you would have gotten from the Chapter 1 secret area, and this has the passive effect of giving you immunity to lava terrain, or other such equivalent items will also do the same thing. Follow this specific patch of lava river along then without taking damage now, and you will find a pile of rocks on the ground. Get closer to it and it'll form into the Flint Chief optional boss. The fight itself isn't too difficult, but it has a couple of unique rewards for completing it. The first one being one of the Samadhi Fire Crystal materials, of which you will need 3 to craft a brand new weapon upgrade for the Cloud Pattern Stone Staff, which is the Staff of Blazing Karma. This thing is honestly really quite neat. 100 attack, 40 defense inherently, and 10 burn resistance too, as well as the unique weapon effect, which is charged heavies in Smash Dance that cost 3 or more do a flaming lava burst effect on the ground. Basically, this is the Scorch equivalent of the Golden Longstaff for thunder attacks, and it gives a similar conceptual playstyle to Smash Dance instead of just Pillar Stance having that, which is honestly really cool too, on top of just being a visually fantastic weapon. The other reward for Flint Chief is the Flint Chief Spirit, which has an attack deflect as the active move, and 4 Bane resistance increase as the passive equip effect. After that, back to the spot that we jumped into the river from the shielded enemy on the sort of rocky bridge. This time you want to jump off to the right side into another lava patch. Follow this path through to the end of the lava and you will find what appears to be another of the 5 element carts, but in a bit of a state of disarray. You don't have to interact with this cart at all for the secret area quest. This one's just sort of automatic, so realistically there are only 4 element carts that you actually have to deal with, but this is actually related to a separate thing, a long-running quest line with the Horsewhite, who is actually trapped inside. He will only be here if you have already seen him in the spots in each previous chapter, which we have talked about in the past. But then if you find him here, and you must find him and talk to him here using the interact prompt before fighting the next major mandatory boss if you want this to conclude properly. But if you do, after you finish that next main boss, come back here and interact with it once more, and you will unlock the relatively well hidden Dark Thunder transformation spell. This lets you turn into the Horsewhite yourself. This is a thunder-based transformation. Part of the big deal with this is any focus that you build up while transformed, you will keep afterwards when you transform back into monkey mode. So you can use this as a sort sort of extra health bar to generate a bunch of extra focus points that you can then spend in monkey mode on your big heavy attacks. He also has a unique spell that can only be used with full focus, infusing the whip with thunder and entering a special state that makes every whip strike cause lightning to hit the enemy as well, which is honestly just really neat. Then as we progress through the main path of the area, past the Rakshasa Palace Shrine, you will start to find some bull-like warrior-looking enemies. They are very distinct and look like this, and each of these is a random chance to drop a specific curio, the White Seashell Waist Chain. The drop chance isn't great on this curio, but there are a fair few of these enemies on the path forward from here, from this shrine, and they all have the chance to drop the item, which is quite literally a simple 5 attack gain for a curio slot, so it's definitely not bad at all if you happen to get it. One last thing here then, as you progress through this area, you will notice the absolutely massive giant shield warriors guarding the wall just before the next shrine. You probably want to grab the shrine before you fight them because they do have a fair bit of health just to be safe, but the giant enemy on the right of these two will drop the gold button curio. This increases your attack by 15 when you're at full health, and an interesting note on this is that it is also a snapshot mechanic, meaning if you put this curio on while you are at full health, you will get the attack bonus applied. Then even if you remove the curio, you won't lose the attack bonus that it gave you unless you lose the health and go below maximum, which is a pretty interesting thing to note as well. Moving on to the Emerald Hall Shrine then. This is right before a major boss fight, and while it's hard to miss, you want to make sure that you pick up the mythical drink sitting right behind this boss's end position, the Long Bomb. This is just a really solid drink. It pairs great with a big heavy attack or Cloudstep style builds, boosting the next big attack that you do after drinking, and it has 4 goddamn soak slots, which is quite a fair amount of those as well. Then next up along the mandatory path behind that boss fight. If you have dealt with the other carts beforehand, you will find the Crimson Silver cart in combat with the Pale Axe Stalwart. He will either be fighting here or he won't, and I'll describe how that happens in a moment, but the actual boss itself, the cart, is unmissable of course, and again we do need to make a point of it because these are required for the secret area of the chapter. Then after we head down to the next shrine, Ashen Pass the Third, and just around the corner from this is a mushroom patch. Pull out this one specifically, which is quite suspicious looking, to reveal the optional 9-capped Lingzi Guai boss fight, which drops the Earth Spirit cap, unique helmet, which on top of just replacing your whole ass head with a mushroom, which is hilarious, also makes you just passively lose health in exchange for a notable increase to the health regain you get when you use your healing gourd. So basically it makes your gourd stronger, but also puts you on a bit of a timer. It's definitely not bad for boss fights as a result of that, but it is terrible for anything else that isn't bosses, as you'll just be constantly losing health. This fight also gives you the 9-capped Lingzi Seed to bring back to your Zodiac village so you can actually farm these properly, and it gives you the 9-capped Lingzi Guai Spirit with the active effect of just doing loads of poison damage to enemies nearby, and the passive equip effect of a mana cost reduction to your mysticism spells, which is awesome specifically for something like an immobilized focused build, as that's the main overlap. Past that there will be a pretty honestly irritating section where you have to dodge and hide around this big sentient iron ball enemy that one-shots if it touches you, but when you get past that, a cutscene will play to show you that the enemy is gone, the area is safe, and the fires that were along that path will also be put out. And what might not be immediately obvious is that there is a whole area that was hidden behind one of these fires that you couldn't physically get past before, but now you can. So from this spot here, which is where the cutscene with the big ball going away ends, you want to turn around, back up the path that you came, and follow the way that I move here, back through the area to find this little spot, which used to be covered in fire, but now is an open secret path. About 10 feet into this path, you will find a pile of rocks that will form together when you approach it to make the Flint Vanguard optional boss. This guy drops the second of 3 Samadhi Fire Crystals for the weapon craft that we talked about earlier, and it also drops his spirit as an item, with the active effect of stacking Scorchbane on an enemy, and the passive equip effect of moderate scorch damage increase and burn resistance as well. But that's not it for this path. Instead, you want to head further down along this actual slope here, skipping the interact prompt that you may see until you hit the Cooling Slope Shrine. Here at the store, you can buy flame ore, specifically, which is interesting to note, because you do actually want to do that if you don't have 5. These can drop from enemies, or you can just buy them from the shop here, but from the shrine, head back up the slope and over to the spot of suspiciously glowing ground with an interact prompt talking about a delivery. If you have flame ore, you can use this here and deliver it here to spawn in another optional boss, the Mother of Flamlings. On death, she will give you the third of these Samadhi Fire Crystals, so you can now fully craft that weapon, and she also drops the Mother of Flamlings Spirit with the active effect of summoning Flamelings, and the passive effect of reducing the cooldown of all spells spells, which is honestly a pretty massive bonus for just a spirit passive. At this point, you do need to make a stop back at Ashen Pass 1 and talk to our Pale Axe Stalwart Bullman friend who told us about the element cards to begin with. Exhaust his dialogue here, and it's worth noting, if you did this before the 4th cart, he will instead be at the 4th cart boss fight on the top of the hill and help you with that fight. Otherwise, you will have to find him here in his original spot, and then after you exhaust his dialogue there, you will then have to meet him where the 4th cart used to be on the top of that same hill past the Emerald Hall Shrine, and you'll have to exhaust his dialogue here too. This is where a lot of people get lost, because if you do the cart before you talk to him, he will move to the spot, and it won't show up on any shrine, it won't tell you where he is, so you can easily lose him. But if you exhaust his dialogue here, and then after you've done that, you want to head back to the Cooling Slope Shrine. Then you want to head down the slope, past the shrine, towards the big, ornate, cold-looking door. And if the prior steps have been completed, a cutscene will play as you approach, and you'll have the proper optional final boss element cart. Defeating this also gives you the Flame Orb Curio, which is just a moderate burn resistance. And of course, this is also the final step to unlocking the secret area of this chapter after you talk to the Fallen Bull NPC, after which you can now interact with the frozen wall and essentially break it open so you can pass through. I won't spoil any of the obvious proper secret area bosses because they aren't missable in here, but before you technically enter the actual secret area, immediately left in this tiny little cavern is the 5th of the optional frog bosses of the whole game. This matters a lot if you want the achievement for killing all of these optional frogs, but he doesn't give you much of a reward himself outside of that. After that, you actually walk into the center of the cave and you'll be taken to the secret area properly. As mentioned, I will not be spoiling the bosses in here that you will obviously come across, and there's actually no optional ones in here really, but so you know, the rewards in this place are a bunch of mythical crafting materials scattered through. Things like Celestial Ribbon, which is quite good for upgrading your armor to mythical quality. Then the big guns on this one, the required material for both a new staff and a new armor set, the staff being 105 attack, 10% crit chance, so a really solid stat split on a staff, but it doesn't actually have a unique weapon effect like the other ones do. That said, we also then have a full armor set that you can craft with the materials from here. Awkwardly, you cannot get enough of the materials that you need to craft the full armor set in one single playthrough, so if you do want some of this, you have to choose wisely. The 2-set bonus gives you a defense bonus after you take damage, the 4-set bonus completely removes the perfect dodge mechanic from the game, but you get the tenacity effect when you are below half health. What this effect specifically means is that you get poise broken less. There are still attacks that will flinch you out of your attacks, but the vast majority of the more regular sized hits from enemies will just sort of not interrupt your attacks anymore, though they will still of course do damage to you. The unique effect is on the helmet for this, and it gives you a moderate focus gain whenever you take damage, with a bonus to this amount if you also have the tenacity effect active, which is important to mention. You can actually activate through things like medicine, not just needing to do with this armor. That's it then everyone, all the particularly meaningful or important secrets in Chapter 5, definitely a stark difference and departure from the labyrinthine nature of Chapter 4, but still a lot of notable things that you can absolutely miss within this chapter. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, and hopefully I've helped you all out in finding at least some bits that you may have missed on your initial time through Chapter 5, or if you're just following this along as you go too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.